Please take your not yet. Please take your seats. Everyone, please take your seats. Thank you very much. We're running on a tight schedule. If everyone can please take your seats. Hold on it for a second. We'll be starting in just a few moments. If everyone outside in the hallway can please join us in the main room.
Not on Prime Minister's thing on yet.
The whole thing's recorded A to Z.
Sorry, which channel we using for translate?
We're going to do, let me see. Well, welcome and thank you to the El-Monitor Global Institute Conference on the Future of Power and Energy in the Circumstances of Iran. I'm Andrew Harris-Lee, President of El-Monitor. The El-Monitor Global Institute, which is the convener for this event, is the event arm of El-Monitor, the award-winning media service covering the Middle East. We've got quite an agenda today. And before we get started, first things first, I want to thank and recognize His Excellency, Prime Minister Bashir of the Kurdistan Regional Government of Iraq for being with us today. Thank you very much. And I also want to acknowledge the members of this delegation, the members of this representational office here in Washington, this entire team for their partnership, cooperation in bringing this event together. Thank you very much for all you've done. I'd also like to recognize our sponsors. before we get started. The CAR Group, who is our lead sponsor today, Onyx, DNO, Western Zagros, HKN, and Moss. Thank you all for your support. It means a lot for bringing together these companies who are doing fantastic work in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. And they're a big part of this story that we're talking about today. And also special thanks to our friends at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the U.S. Kurdistan Business Council. They are also a part of what we're doing today and have been key in this event. I've been around for 2 decades, involved or watching visits by the leadership of the Kurdistan Regional Government in Washington. And I think I can say that this week may be among the most consequential of any visit by a Kurdistan Regional Government leader ever. And let's start with 2 pieces of information, and we'll get into more of this afternoon or this morning. First, the signing of energy agreements totaling $110 billion investment in the Kurdistan region's future. That includes Western Zagros, which is estimated to generate $70 billion in revenue, and which occurred with the explicit support of the U.S. government through commercial advocacy. HKN expected to bring in $40 billion in revenue, again, $110 billion. And the State Department, most importantly, has come out and the U.S. government has supported these deals. And then, following that, Secretary Rubio said this week in testimony before the conference that the autonomous Kurdistan region is, and by extension, these commercial agreements are a linchpin of U.S. policy in Iraq and the region. That is a significant step. It occurred during a very full visit by Prime Minister Barzani, who is overseeing these agreements, and as many meetings with leading officials. Thank you again for being here with us. We have a full panel today, and we want to get right into it. So we already have our panel on the stage. First, I'd like to welcome His Excellency Kamal Mohammed Saleh, the Minister of Electricity and the Acting Minister of Natural Resources of the Kurdistan Regional Government of Iraq, Mr. Chris Spencer, Managing Director of DNO, contributing sponsor of today's event, Dr. Matthew Zeiss, Vice President, Government Affairs, HKN, supporting sponsor of our event today, and Mr. Gerald Capps, President of Competitive Energy Strategies. Thank you all for coming. For translation, His Excellency the Minister will be speaking in Kurdish. You have your devices here. Press the button on the top. If you could press 2, I think it's 2 for Kurdish, 5 for English. 2 for Kurdish, 5 for English. Excellency, Mr. Minister, thank you again for being here today.
Thank you for
it. Let's start with you. These agreements have been signed. U.S. investment totaling $110 billion. It seems to be quite a sea change. Tell us about how you see the future of American investment in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, and what is your projection for Kurdistan region's resources with this type of investment?
بله زور سپاس جنابی سروک حکومت کاگ سرور بارزانی آماده بو این هجا پی خوشحالم کو افرود خدمت هوای این هجا داد زور سپاس بو انستیتوت مونیتور بو رخصنا اوی كۆنفرانسی راستی بابت وزی بابت کی اکجار گرینگ بو هر ولات کی یان هریم کی سبارت سقامگیریا آبوری یا سیاسی یا کمالاتی بو هر ولاتکی ام وکو حکمت هرما کردستان الدویف او دستور عراق کو دنگ السرات دان و هاتیا شرعیت حکمت هرمی و قوار فدرالی هرمی دای امال دوی یاسا وزارت سامان سروشتی جماره 22/2007 چندین گیری بست واره نفت دام امضا کردن الگل چندین کمپانیا شوانا کمپانیا HKN و وسترن زاگروس و هانت اویل که و کمپانیت امریکی بوینه در انجام اوا گریبستا ام گهشن هنده کو زیادتر 400,000 برمیل نفت ام روزانه هنارده بریکا پایپلاین کردستان هنارده مینای جهان بکن و لویر دا بچت بازار جهانی هر وسا دوار غازه داجی چندین دو گریبست حد بونه کرن در انجام دان اوا گریبستا مشه نوکه اول وردست مشه 150 مليون بي سجارة غازن بو دابين كردنا كهرباء بو هريما كردستاني وبشكش العراقي جي بس وكو خاصة هريمة سربابة غازة ام محتاجي 1100 ميجاوات مليون بي سجارن يعني او غاز البردس هما تني 500 بيتفيت كهرباء دابين دكت هر وسط واره كهرباء داجي حتی 2007 تنی ما 100 حتی 105 مگاوات کاربی الهرم هبون بس نوکه سپاسیا کو حکومت هرم پشتوانیا کا ایجار بو کرته کاربی کری نوکه ام خدانت زیادترش 8000 مگاوات کاربی نه و 8000 مگاوات 5205 تنی جرخانه ریکا کمپانیا جی ای امریکی تاتنی کردن یعنی همشین بین جرخانه کارابا حکومت هرم کردستان 64 صده برهم کمپانیین امریکیه اف کارابا جی نتنی بو وکو هرم بلکی بشه دیترت عراق جی مستفیدن ام پی تی وی دابی کرنا سوتمنی نبو ویزگین مید کارابه لوما الوی سردانه کل 19 دو گره بستی دیتر یت اکجار گرنگ اتواره نفت و غاز دا هاتنا امضا کرن کو دا پیداویستین هرمی هر وها بش دیتر جیت عراق بنا دابی کرن بله جه داخل کو طبعا اوه گل دو کمپانیین امریکی کمپانیا HKN کو هم دست خوشی لید کن اوه حقل سیه کو پشتی یه سرسنگ و یه اتریش نکل میرانجی اف گیره بسته کری هر وصا عقد دیتریل گل کمپانیا ویسن زاگروس کو اوجی عقد دویه پشتی کردمیر کو عقد توبخانه جی هات امضا کرن بله جه داخل کو اف هنگاوه تین هاویتن بو باشکرنا روشا خدمت گزاری الهرم العراقي مديد موقف حكومة عراقي وتايبت وزارة نفط عراقي دجي افري كفتني بوينه الدم كده افري كفتنا دجي تشكسان لايانانينا بلكي بو هندي كو امجير خانه كاب هيستر الهرم والعراقي وبيت جيبجي كرين وكو هرم مستفيد بيت عراق مستفيد بيت كومباني جي مستفيد بن لو ما داخوزما اش حكمتا امريكي او كو هردم پشتوان بوياجي بابت اكسبورت جاركا دي تري جدي سر راوستيد دا اف اكسبورت جاركا دي دس بيتا كرين هر وصا هاندانا كومبانيين امريكي كو ام بي خوش حالن ام الفيري خدمتا اوا كومبانيا دان و مدوين ام كومبانيا بين استثمارا کا باشتر بكن هر چند پیشتر جي كربو نوكاجي ما امضا عقد الجلوان امضا كرينه و ام برهفن عقد دي ترجيت مجال چه يه نفته دا چه غازه چه كهرباء اوجي بين امضا كرن هر وصا ام داخواست كن كو اف فشارين وزارت نفت السر اوا عقدات کرد بین راگرتن چونکی براستی اف جوره گیره بست دجی چه کسانین و چه لاینانینن بلکی بو هنده کو ام هریمکا بهس روی آبوری روی سیاسی روی جغرافی دور هبید بو سقامگیریا اوه نافچه.
Thank you, Minister Kamal. I think the point that you make, the vast potential of the Kurdistan region's energy resources, the gas, the electricity, should be something that can be of value to Iraq and even beyond Iraq in the future, given the extent of those resources and with American and outside investment. Thank you. Matt, let me come to you next. HKN has signed this binding term sheet for a deal that will be valued at $40 billion in revenues. The minister mentioned that you've been already been in the Kurdistan region in a number of fields, in the Atrush and Sarsang field block since 2007. Tell us how you see the situation regarding the future of gas in the Kurdistan region, and what steps need to be taken to continue the vision and progress that we've seen this week.
Thank you, Andrew, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone. It's as you noted, it's been quite a week. It's a pretty significant event this week in terms of the signal from U.S. investors willing to invest in the Kurdistan region's gas resources. We've all known for some time that Kurdistan's gas is a significant resource for Iraq. In particular, the Department of Energy 5 years ago did a comprehensive strategy for Iraq's and for Kurdistan's gas market. And so the gas resources there are well known. What's also well known is that Iraq has a significant gas shortage. They don't have a gas reserve shortage, they have a production of gas shortage and consequently a significant electricity shortage. And unfortunately that's going to come to bear again this summer like it has in previous summers, where there's going to be a significant deficit in electricity derived from that gas once again, and largely due to its artificial dependency on Iran and its inability to capture gas and develop its own gas resources. I can't think of a more important signal than significant U.S. investment and commitment to develop Iraq's gas, and in this case in the Kurdistan region, by both us and Western Zagros. This gas and this electricity is going to benefit all of Iraq. It's something that Iraq desperately needs, and hopefully it's going to be welcomed. And we greatly appreciate the fact that these investments and these deals come with significant U.S. support, as we also heard yesterday from Secretary Rubio. I would be remiss, though, if I didn't also mention that the reality on the ground is that there is still a challenge in Iraq between underneath the Constitution and the federal rights of the Kurdistan region, and we are experiencing that commercially ourselves with the closure of the ITP, the Iraqi-Turkey pipeline. 26 months later, the Iraqi-Turkey pipeline remains closed. It's fundamentally harmed many of our companies, including my colleague here at DNO. And it's cost us billions and billions of dollars, and it's cost the Iraqi people billions and billions of dollars. So clearly the challenge is not economic, the challenge is political. We think it can be solved, but it's going to probably require greater U.S. support going forward. I would also be remiss not to thank former U.S. officials like Ambassador Pyatt and Das Taylor, who have led the charge to support our company and the Kurdistan region and reopening the Iraqi-Turkey pipeline. It's not only necessary for us commercially, it's necessary for the Kurdistan region. It's what has built the Kurdistan region, and it's also necessary for the Mediterranean and the global energy markets. So we are proud to be part of this solution, and we look forward to the future.
Very good. Thank you for that, Matt. And I think you raised an important point, which is regard to the U.S. support and U.S. policy. As we saw, the U.S. has supported with strong commercial advocacy. The Western Zagros deal came in strongly behind the Western Zagros and HKN deal within 24 hours after Baghdad's objections. The State Department put out a statement saying that they support these commercial transactions as instrumental. And policy under the Trump administration indicate that the contracts of international oil companies operating in the Kurdistan region need to be honored and arrears paid, and that's also part of U.S. policy, and that's a significant change in support of U.S. investors there. We'll come back to these themes. This is going to be a major theme of our conference today. Chris, I want to come to you. DNO has been operating in the Kurdistan region for 20 years, 21 years at this point. The Talc and Peshkabir oil fields. So the deal signed this week emphasized the gas potential. Talk to us a little about how you see the oil futures. Matt mentioned some of the challenges regarding the ITP pipeline, but tell us about DNO's experience and how you see the future on the oil side.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll try to address that, but thanks very much to Al Monitor for the invitation, and thank you for joining, Your Excellency. Just for those who are not so familiar with DNO, although those who follow Kurdistan I'm sure are, the DNO is an Oslo, Norway listed oil and gas company, over 50 years old. And one of the reasons for our attendance today is we have very strong links to the US as well. So we have a substantial number of our investors in DNO are based in the US, and most importantly, our executive chairman Bijan Mosavar Rahmani, who's also the biggest single owner in the company, is a US citizen. As you say, Andrew, we have been in the Kurdistan region for 21 years, and so we were in very much at the beginning of the modern Kurdistan region, we can call it that, and we built up this wonderful oil production at the Tawke-Peshkabir fields, where we're producing about 80,000 barrels a day gross at the moment. And over that period, we've generated some just short of $20 billion of income for the Kurdistan regional government, on the back of almost $5 billion of inward investment from ourselves and partners. So it's been a successful business overall. Of course, in the 21 years, there's been lots of ups and downs. There's been lots of challenges along the way. And commercially, good times, and commercially more challenging times. And I think that the current situation is more challenging with the inability to sell at world market rates. And what you see across the whole oil and gas business in Kurdistan, unfortunately, is that that means there's very little investment in further development of the fields taking place. Now, the oil and gas fields in the Kurdistan region, because of the geology, it's really essential to be able to keep drilling and keep investing if we want to maintain the type of production rates that we see today. That, for us, is the key reason why we need to get back to international exports, get an arrangement in place with respect to the debts that are owed to our company, so that we can get back to doing what we're good at, which is drilling oil wells and maximizing the production.
Thank you, Chris. Jerry, you know and have studied very carefully the entire region's gas fields and networks. Give us a kind of regional perspective, and when I say regional, looking at the Kurdistan region within the broader context of gas resources in the Middle East. How do you see the opportunities for the future, both within the region and even beyond Iraq, given the resources and potential?
Thank you, Andrew, but let me first steal something from some of what my colleagues here said, and that is, I think everybody should understand the technical resources are there. This is all about taking resources, translating them into reserves, which is an economic commercial term. Resources, air is a resource, water is a resource, but they're not economic values until something happens. So this is really the challenge. Now, I'm a geologist by background. I was trained to do and focus and address below ground risk and challenges. I haven't worked in the Middle East since Egypt and Libya in 1982. Almost everything we've confronted was really about above ground issues. So that's really the challenge, and that's what brings us here today, right? So resources into reserves. How to do that. The second aspect here is when you think about natural gas, and keep in mind natural gas is completely different than crude oil. It may sound strange to say that. Obviously we're talking about underground resources, but natural gas is an economic fuel. That's not the case for crude oil. There's a lot more work that goes into marketing, commercializing natural gas. As an economic fuel, it means a lot more. So when we think about what the opportunity set is, that's what we need to talk about. So we're sitting in this region, and as a colleague said, the whole region is mostly gas short. Not from a resource perspective, because resources in some respects almost don't matter, but from a reserves perspective. In terms of gas infrastructure, it's energy short. It's an extraordinary opportunity. If the KRG could take its 24-hour-a-day electricity model and export it to the nearby regions, can you think about what the populations in Syria in due course, in Lebanon, in southern Iraq, Jordan would think about and give for 24 hours a day electricity? It would be an extraordinary change. So you're not exporting potentially just natural gas here, but power, but also the idea. That has a lot more legs to it from that perspective. I mean, that is the opportunity, which is really quite extraordinary. So what would it take to get this done? Well, first of all, the strategy is export the electricity for 24 hours a day to the nearby countries. Obviously, you need the technical operational capabilities. These gentlemen here represent that. Many American companies have that, and DNO, of course, right? So, but what they really need is governments to work with the KRG government. That is critical. Without that, the rest of us, we're just wasting our time. Because that $70 billion investment, and those results rather, they're not going to happen unless this happens. So that's really the big deal. Finally, it seems to me that if KRG could do this, it would really help change the narrative with Baghdad. That whole narrative has been about crude oil and exports and rights and contract stability and changes and who, understandably, but this could change the entire narrative. And actually, when it comes back around, could help the problem with crude oil exports. Let me leave it there, but again, the opportunity really is extraordinary.
Thank you very much, Jerry. And really compelling vision. Excellency, Mr. Minister, I'd like to come back to you with the question. What picked up, we mentioned earlier the challenges of Baghdad has challenged these contracts and challenged the contracts of the existing IOCs of those operating in the Kurdistan region. As acting Minister of Natural Resources, could you comment on the Kurdistan region's position on those talks that are taking place right now to resolve those issues so that those contracts are honored? And where do you see this standing, and how do you see the challenges ahead in the negotiations with Baghdad, which are instrumental to get that pipeline open?
سبارت ام بابته هکل روی یاسای اما تماشا بکن عقدکانی سرجم عقدکان حکومت اتحادی دام پیدان کردوده لروی یاسایی و چونکی اما چار قناغ یاسایی هیا قناغ بداء استئناف تمیز و تصحیح تمیز هر چار قناغ دا ام عقدانه یاسایینه وقت كاتكي كعقد الروي ياساي توابي لازم جيبه جكرنا كجي توابي بلام وزارة النوت كلفاك بيشتر القانوني بودجة داس نشان كرد بو $6 كهيج لكمبانيا كان رازي نبو او كلفاك حقيقي نبو نتواني انتاج بو نرخة بكريت لو ما ياساي بودجه خویان هموار کردن المانگی چوار ام یاسای چو واری جیبه جه کردن و بوین $16 لیره دا کمپانیا کان او $16 وکو سلفه استا رازینه وکو سلفه بلام دو فاکتری سرکیل نو عقد دهانه که کومرشل مدل یعنی ايكونوميك موديل و كوميرشال تيرم امانه دبيت كومبانيا راوشكاري كونسلتن يعني برچاو ور بگري چونكي هكا ام هردو فاكترانا برچاو نه هاتن ورگرتن او كاتا معنوي دسلداني عقدكانه بجا او يكل دواكاريه كريز لم گربستانه بكرين اويتر كومبانيا كان داواي زماناتي مستحقات خویان دکن اما جیل چه هاتوه چونکی اما السر داواکاری وزارت نوت زیاتر 11 ملیون و 0.8 ملیون برمیلی نوت اما رادستی وزارت نوت کردن بود تصفیه بلام حتا استا وزارت نوت یعنی وزارت دارای $1 و $1 بو ام کمپانیا صرف نکردن لو ما اما دل راحتیک لای کمپانیا کان بوه دلين چه زمانات هي اما جاره كتر نوتي خو تسليم بكنو مستحقاتي ما بين دانن وكو كونسلتان اما وزارتي نوت ريكوتناك وود ماكنزي كومبانيا كي امريكيه او ايشا بكد بلام بابتي او زماناتنا هشتا ماينه او مستحقاتي وان نهاتنا صرف كردن و چندین کوبنەوە هاتنێ کردن بەڵام ئەو فترەی پێشتر کە هەفتەیەک بوو عراق قمة عربية تداهات بكردن عندك أو مفاوضات هاتنا راجرتن بتماينا يعني بهوادا كان كلو نيزي كان جارك تر أو قفتو قوانا بحاضر بوني كومبانيا كان كإما چند جار سرداني باغامان كردبو كومبانيا كان قلما بون وسپاسی سفارت امریکا دکن که رولکی باش هبو بو نیزی کردنوی هر دو وزارت بو چاره سرکردنی ام بابت.
Matt, if we could pick up on what the minister just talked about regarding these negotiations, and we've already talked about what seems to be a shift towards an even stronger support by the U.S. government in support of resolving these issues. Could you comment a little more on U.S. policy and also on the legal issues? The minister mentioned that these contracts have been approved constitutionally. Iraqi court cases in the past few years have also indicated that these are indeed valid contracts. So what's the holdup?
Well, Andrew, I think history is important, and I think sometimes even in this city we forget our own history. And so let me back up a little bit. Having participated in the invasion in Iraq in 2003 as a much younger version of myself, we were at the cusp of what is now New Iraq, which is now codified under the Constitution that was ratified in 2005. And I think it's important for everyone, including the U.S. government, to refresh themselves on why is the Kurdistan region exists now under the Iraqi Constitution, and what was the U.S.'s role in that? And the U.S.'s role was consequential. The only reason why the Kurdistan region under President Masoud Barzani agreed to sign that constitution was because the United States guaranteed the articles in that constitution that afforded it federal autonomous rights, including the development of its natural resources. And that was the only reason why the Kurdistan region agreed to be part of this new Iraq, this post-Saddam Iraq. And the U.S. government was at the forefront and part of that agreement. And so here we are in 2025. Companies like ours, we are the largest private U.S. investor in all of Iraq. We're the largest U.S. investor in the Kurdistan region. We made those significant commercial decisions and commitments based on the legal constitution that the United States helped broker and guarantee the autonomous rights for the Kurdistan region. So here we are in 2025 in negotiations, and I was in Baghdad 2 weeks ago, and this constitution remains the cornerstone of why there's a debate even about why these contracts have any question about their legality and validity, which have been validated by the international law, international courts, and also most recently the Iraqi courts. And so now we're down to how do we convince the government of Iraq of 2025, which we all understand looks much different than anyone envisioned in 2003 or 2005, to honor those commitments and really welcome the U.S. investment. The United States invested, or spent, I should say, blood and treasure in Iraq. Some would say upwards of $2 trillion. We would think that American investment would be welcome, and the contracts that we legally signed would be welcome to develop the natural resources that Iraq so desperately needs. I will go back to Iraq shortly to resume negotiations, and we hope that we can remind ourselves of why we're here, why we've made these investments, and why it's so critical for the Iraqi people.
Thank you. Chris, would you pick up on some of what Matt was talking about? Obviously, DNO has had a similar vision for Iraq since its liberation from Saddam Hussein in 2003. It is important to recall the history, how autonomy for the Kurdistan region and control of its resources is indeed in the Constitution, and that's been recognized even by some recent Iraqi court cases. How do you see the current negotiations, what's happening, and what do you see as a likely, probable, and best case outcome, and what do you worry about?
Oh, thank you for the last part of that
in
question.
about 3 minutes, put it all together.
So as you say, I touched on in my opening remarks that, I mean, DNO has participated and witnessed a tremendous development of the Kurdistan region in the last 21 years. And in our view, that has been the investment of international companies and gas companies in the Kurdistan region has been absolutely instrumental in that. And we've stuck it out through tough times. Obviously, when the region was fighting for its life against ISIS, again, DNO stood by and carried on producing the oil, as did many of our colleagues in the international sector. So we feel like we've made a very strong contribution. Of course, we've made some profit along the way, but that is the nature of the business. As to the current impasse, it's I think a kind of frustrating one from our perspective, because it seems that really the issues are not that difficult if the political will were in place, and that has made it very challenging for us as a commercial company. We've operated in many countries in the Middle East over the history of DNO, and we try to draw quite a clear line between what a commercial company does and what is the responsibility of governments and politicians. And so for us this has been very clearly a political problem. We're here to support. We will continue to invest. We'll ramp up investment on the back of an agreement, but we think it's important for the governments to resolve this issue. And as is the case with many issues in Iraq, we see that it's very important for the US government and indeed other regional governments to support a solution. So we encourage everyone who is solution oriented to get involved and see what they can come up with, and we'll be there to maximize the investment on the back of a good solution.
Very good. Jerry, very briefly, please, we're running out of time, but I want to take what you said one step further and with even more specificity regarding the potential of the Kurdistan region, the gas export power in the region. When you look at the context, we see a situation in Syria that's going to need energy. We have interests in, Matt mentioned earlier, of Iraq being weaned off Iranian electricity and gas. There's a real opportunity here, and you mentioned the resources are there for the Kurdistan region to really propel, to be a force in a regional integration, at least with regard to the energy piece. Would you agree with that, or I think your research has shown some of this?
I look at all these things from a competitive point of view, right? And the truth is, thinking about Iran for a second, is Iran is struggling itself, despite being about the third or fourth largest gas sector in the world. They're not able to deliver because of inadequacy of investment, et cetera. So even Iran. So that problem actually, in some respects, goes away because they need to solve their internal problems, right? So let's look west. Because of this energy shortage that I refer to, this gas short, Jordan, Egypt, Syria now, Lebanon, southern Iraq, these, from a competitive perspective, the supplies aren't there. The projections this year for Iraq as a whole, which is really mostly southern Iraq, is that at peak load requirement for gas this summer, the available power supply is only about 50%. 50%, that is catastrophic. Never mind being inconvenient by not having power. We're talking, you know, people will be dying this summer because of this in the rest of Iraq. So what would people give to have electricity 24 hours a day? What can you do with that? And would that help change the narrative of the discussion that the rest of you are here to talk about truth growth? That's the thing I would put up for you. And competitively, other sources of supply in the region are not capable of standing up for a set of reasons, mostly above ground. Let me stop there.
Very good, and thank you all. This was a rich panel in terms of analysis and information. Thank you, Excellency Minister Kamal, for your participation and leadership. on these issues, Matt Zeiss, HKN, Chris Spencer, DNO, good friends, and also for your corporate engagement on these important matters and investment in the region and your support for this conference. We appreciate it. Jerry Kepps, my friend, thank you for that analysis. Sure. We are going to bring up the next panel. There is no break. You see the schedule on the program. We go immediately to our next panel because of Secretary Wright and Prime Minister Barzani's schedules today. So just join me in the transition for 30 seconds to a fantastic panel, and let's bring up our next group. Thank you, Minister. Really good. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe not for long. We'll see. Oh, yeah.
All right, why don't you sit here? Yes, my friend. Thank you. Amen.
Hello, Minister. Yep. Want me here?
We'll clear that up.
Good? Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. So our next panel is the Kurdistan region's energy sector. The first was about his oil hub. This is now promise and pressure, and we have a very distinguished panel with us. First, His Excellency Dr. Ahmad Rahim. He's Minister and Cabinet Secretary in the Kurdistan Regional Government. Thank you. Mr. Brad Kemp, Chief Strategy Officer, Car Group, major investor in power, energy, engineering, both in the Kurdistan region and throughout Iraq. And Dr. Michael Knights, the Jill and Jay Bernstein Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. So welcome to all of you. Minister Amenj, we were talking about the pipeline earlier. This has come up. No one better to talk about the pipeline than with you. You're involved in the negotiations. You're part of the KRG negotiating team. Tell us from your perspective as someone in the negotiations where this process stands, how you see it working out. It's not only legal complex issues, but that there are also overlaying issues regarding KRG, Iraq, Turkey relations, and of course the role of the United States.
Thank you, Andrew. You all know that the Iraqi constitution created and adopted the federalism in 2005. And very clearly it's allowing the Kurdistan region to develop its oil and gas, natural resources, including oil and gas. But unfortunately, till now, the federal government failed to implement the federalism system in this regard. And still they are, unfortunately, using and implementing laws and legislations which belong to the Saddam's regime. Still, the law is belong to the 1976, while it is really against the Iraqi constitution. If you look at the Iraqi constitution, it's very clearly divided the powers between the Kurdistan region and the federal government. If you look at the Article 110, there are listed all the exclusive authorities for the federal government, and you will not find anything, any articles, any paragraphs regarding the oil and gas. So it's clear that constitutionally the oil and gas is not included in the exclusive authorities for the Iraqi federal government. According to this legal constitutional basis, for the first time the Kurdistan region in 2007 enacted the oil and gas law, while we were in absence of federal oil and gas in whole Iraq. And after validating of this legislation in Kurdistan region, many international oil companies came to Kurdistan, and as I heard from my colleague Minister Kamal, that more than $25 billion has been invested in the oil and gas sector in Kurdistan region. And you are all aware that ExxonMobil came in 2011 as an American oil company. They signed 6 PSCs with the Kurdistan regional government, Ministry of Natural Resources. Chevron came, they signed 2 production sharing contracts at that time, Hunt Oil, and after that HKN and Western Zagros. So we noting that the American international oil company, they have a really very essential role in promoting and developing the oil and gas sector in Kurdistan region. In 2014, February, the Iraqi government cut the share transfers, money transfers to the Kurdistan region. And really it was a very huge economic shock and financial shock for the Kurdistan region. So the Kurdistan region obliged to export oil independently from the Baghdad in May 2014 for the first time through the pipeline. And this process continued until 2023 when the International Chamber of Commerce arbitration case against Turkey is not allowed anymore to exporting oil through the pipeline. Even Iraq won $1.8 billion in the arbitration case, but unfortunately since March 2023, the finance in Iraq and Kurdistan region, we lost almost more than $20 billion. From the financial perspective, really, the arbitration case and the closure of the pipeline really halted the finance in Kurdistan region. So after 2023, according to the new Iraqi budget law, because at the absence of having a federal oil and gas law, we were managing the oil and gas sector since 2005 until now in the frame of the Iraqi budget law, which is not the right place, the Iraqi budget law, to be managing the oil and gas sector and resolving the conflicts between Iraq and Kurdistan region, Baghdad and Erbil. In the legislation of the budget for 3 years, 2023, 2024, 2025, for the first time, Kurdistan region agreed that the Kurdistan oil will be exported through SOMO, which is a state company for oil marketing. And the revenue of the exported oil will be transferred to the Ministry of Finance. But the Kurdistan was expecting, in return, we are getting our share from the Iraqi budget law. But the articles in the Iraqi budget law really was interpreted by the Ministry of Oil with a very limited, narrow interpretation. They offered at the beginning just $6 per barrel for the cost of production and transportation, which doesn't work for the IOCs and for the production sharing contract. You know, there is a huge difference between the contract that has been signed in Iraq and the one that has been signed in Kurdistan region. There in the Kurdistan region, we have a production sharing contract. In the rest of Iraq, the mostly is the service contracts. Even lately, they have a profit sharing contract, which is very close from the economic model and commercial terms, is very close to the production sharing contract. Really, this $6 doesn't work at the beginning. So the federal government and the Kurdistan region, we worked very closely together to amend the Iraqi budget law for the first time in 2025. And the $6 has been increased to be $16, which is really a progress in the negotiation regarding resuming the export, the oil export through the pipeline. And in the amendment, we agreed that we will hire a technical consultant because the $16 will be like an advance payment. And this technical consultant will come and evaluate and estimate, looking at the production sharing contract, looking at the R factor, and looking at the economic model and the commercial term of the production sharing contract to know if this $16 is matched with the economic model of the contract or should be reduced. So it has been almost like 6 months. We are negotiating with the Iraqi government, and you know we have a third party which they are producers of the oil. Our situation is not like Iraq. Iraq, they have their national oil companies. Even the marketing is through the national SOMO company. But really in Kurdistan region, everything is through the private sector. So the main point that really now it's outstanding between the Kurdistan regional government and Baghdad and the IOCs is about the role of the technical consultant. Iraqi government and Ministry of Oil asking that the technical consultant should have ability and authority to review the economic model and the commercial terms of the contract, which has been really rejected by the IOCs. As Matt in the first panel really explained very well that the production sharing contracts has been recognized by the judicial system in Iraq. The Karkh Commercial Court in Baghdad recognized all the PSCs that has been signed by the Kurdistan regional government with the IOCs, and even the appeal, which is the highest judicial authority in Iraq, ratified the resolution and the ruling by the commercial court in Baghdad. So now the Iraqi judicial system is recognizing the production sharing contract, as well as I explained at the beginning that the constitution as well is like a another constitutional frame for this production sharing contract. So we are trying now to find another language that compromise the technical consultant will try to find the real cost of the transportation and for the production. And there is a progress as well in this regard. We all three parties, we agreed that we will hire Wood Mackenzie, which they are top consultants around the world. They are providing such consultancy to the governments, to the companies. Second issue is regarding the payment. Still, the IOC, they are asking for guarantees for this, paying these $16 by the Ministry of Finance. So we agreed about having an escrow account, and the Kurdistan Regional Government will compensate the IOCs through these escrow accounts. And Baghdad really agreed that we will compensate IOCs in kind. This is really another progress in this regard, because before they didn't allow that compensation to the oil companies being through the oil in kind. Yeah. And from our side as a government, really, Kurdistan Regional Government from the very beginning agreed that SOMO will be the entity that's exporting oil, selling oil to the international market. And as well, we agreed from our side that the revenue of the oil export will going to the Ministry of Finance. But unfortunately, because we couldn't reach any concrete agreement, after amending the budget law to resumption the oil export, still the local sales inside Kurdistan is continued. Unfortunately, still the oil in Kurdistan region is sold in a very low prices. So Iraq and Kurdistan region, they are really damaging the finance and the budget in whole Iraq by closure of the ITP. So the resumption of the oil export will be in the benefit not just for Kurdistan region, for whole Iraq. If we are assuming now that the oil of Kurdistan will be sold in the international market, let's say with 320,000 barrels, the net revenue after deducting the expenses will be like $800 million, which is covering the Kurdistan salary. So from the financial perspective, from the constitutional perspective, even from the local legal or judicial frame, all supporting the resumption of the export oil to the international market.
Thank you very much. A very helpful overview, and really appreciate your laying that out for us. I'm going to go to Mike next, because I want to stay on this issue of the negotiations in the pipeline. Mike, pick up on what Minister Ramanj has just talked about, and think about it in a kind of a broader context too, with regard with what we've seen in U.S. policy in the past week. I mean, the U.S. policy now is to honor the contracts, pay the arrears. This has been said by Secretary Rubio, by previous National Security Advisor Waltz. The negotiations around the amendment to the budget, I think, could have been complicating from a U.S. perspective. The U.S. government policy is this needs to be done. And how do you see the progress that Minister Amenj has said with the steps that has been taken by the U.S. government? Are we closer to getting this resolved in your perspective, and given the context of what's happened this week with these energy agreements?
So I thought I'd be listening to Brad first talk about the technical details. I was really looking forward to that.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. I'll have to delay gratification. So first of all, starting broadly, I agree with Matt Zeiss that the reunification of Iraq in 2003 was conditional. The Kurdistan region was functionally independent at that time. It had been for much of a decade, even with its own currency. For those of us who remember back into those early days, the old Swiss dinar. And it was reintegrated into Iraq under a set of conditions which were laid out in the Iraqi constitution. And any of us who have been around this whole time can't help but feel terrible about the non-implementation of Article 140 and the manner in which re-centralization became something of a cult in Iraq. So I'll just say this. First of all, 4 points. First, I think the best, and being pessimistic, possibly the only thing that the US can achieve in Iraq at this stage is to create lasting security for Iraq's largest ethnic minority, who is also the main lifeboat for the persecuted Christians of Iraq and many other minorities. Second, Kurdish self-determination within Iraq, autonomy, as Secretary Rubio talked about it, should be US policy, and judging by what we've heard this week, increasingly it is US policy. Now, you know, the US government says a lot of things these days. It needs to follow through with action. And that action is about getting the Baghdad Prime Minister's Office and Ministry of Oil to look at Kurdistan as a synergy, an opportunity, and to work with the political factions in Iraq to silence disruptive elements. We saw a little example of that when we had the amendment of the Iraqi budget. Just for a moment, all the little MPs, all those who would bring up cases in the Supreme Court went silent just for a second. And that was because a very consequential meeting happened at which all Iraq's key leaders were seated together, all Iraq's Shia leaders from the coordination framework and the judiciary, and they said, we need to make this happen. So let's try and make that moment happen again. And we do have time between here and the November elections. Third, there are really significant Baghdad, Kurdistan, Turkey, US synergies. Genuinely. It's important to think about it this way, I think. Without Baghdad-Kurdistan cooperation, there is no development road. There is no connection between the Gulf, Iraq, and Turkey and Europe. There is no Iraq-Turkey pipeline without the Kurdistan region. There is no development of the Kirkuk fields, their expansion, except for internal use in Iraq or sending south, without the Kurdistan region. And there are no major water deals with Turkey without the Kurdistan region, Kurdistan being upstream, an upstream power in this regard. With Baghdad-Kurdistan synergy, we can have all of these things, plus we can also send significant amounts of power to northern Iraq and to adjacent parts of the Middle East. Not just to chase the energy demand that simply will not stop until we get energy reform, electricity reform, but also to replace dependence on Iranian gas, which increasingly doesn't come anymore because of Iran's own shortfalls and climatic conditions. The fourth point, if US, Iraq, Turkey, Kurdistan region is a win-win-win-win, and also a win for the Gulf, incidentally, we need to put this vindictive, chauvinistic discrimination behind us. When, you know, in this town, Iraq is a dirty word because it conjures up many negative thoughts, but it also, I think, gets at the heart of the difference between the new Republican Party and the old one, which is that the new one thinks of Iraq as a disaster and we should never have gone into it. Obviously, it doesn't think of the Kurdistan region the same way, but nonetheless, Iraq is not an easy thing to talk about in this town, including with the new administration. But when we saw President Trump go to Saudi Arabia just now, I think we got a bit of a look at how things can be if you bring stuff down to fundamentals, get back to basics, and focus on something manageable, graspable, which is dollars and cents. You know, ultimately, the US can and should help to resolve this Baghdad-Kurdistan issue this summer because Kurdistan region favors US companies in business. That's just the reality. It has been from the beginning and it can continue to be. Therefore, fixing the Baghdad-Kurdistan dispute once and for all, not only our job, in my view, but if you're a restrainer who are powerful in this town nowadays, ultimately it makes the US more prosperous through our businesses. It makes the US more secure because Kurdistan region is an excellent counter-terrorism partner. and a superb piece of real estate if you're looking at various things happening around the region. And thus it makes the US stronger. This is a very, very limited investment. It feels very, very difficult for the diplomats who are engaged in this tricky process. But in the scheme of things, it's very doable and it's very logical to pull all of these sides together. Baghdad, Kurdistan, US, Turkey, and maybe even Gulf. It's a no-brainer for the US. And I think if we step up now, as we've seen the US doing this week, we can actually grasp that no-brainer after decades of missing it.
Very good, Mike. Well said. Thank you for that analysis. Brad, I do want to hear from you about your work at CAR, and we could go many places when we're talking about the CAR group's work, not just in the Kurdistan region, but throughout Iraq, the most prominent engineering, energy firms in the country. But I'd like to focus on what you're doing in support of electricity, in support of the Runaki project, which has been an amazing success. I know Prime Minister Barzani is going to be talking about that in his remarks. Tell us first how you see the region with terms of the electricity power potential, because you're invested in it, you're working it every day, your partnership with the Kurdistan regional government, how you see that progressing, and how you see the future of that project, and perhaps others you're involved in and thinking about.
Okay, Andrew, thank you. Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here today with all of you. CAR is a fully integrated energy company based in Erbil, and so we don't see power as one piece of it. We see it as a holistic part of our energy business. We have operations in the upstream where we produce both oil and gas. In the oil side, we produce from 9 reservoirs, more than any other oil company in Kurdistan. And on the gas side, we currently process 150 million standard cubic feet of gas for power generation. We as well own and operate the largest private refinery in Iraq that allows us to take the oil domestically produced, either ours or we also purchase from our colleagues here and refine that in our refinery. On the gas side of the house, the gas feeds into our power plant, which is currently 1.5 gigawatt combined cycle power plant. And interestingly, we sell power to 2 customers at our power plant. We sell to the Kurdistan regional government, and we sell an equal amount of power to the federal government of Iraq as well. This is regulated and supported by the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Ministry of Electricity, and the Prime Minister's office to really recognize that we have a resource that's in demand and that we should be sharing that resource since we're able to provide it. If I take a couple of steps back, I'll tell you that in 2004, after the liberation of Iraq, Sheikh Baz, the owner of CAR, looked around and he saw an amazing open field for energy development, and he saw nothing on the field. There was no oil production in the Kurdistan region at the time. There was no refining capacity in the Kurdistan region at the time. There was some rudimentary power production with dirty fuels in the region at the time. And he said, thinking about Rockefeller, as he would often tell the story, that he really needed to look at putting a solution in place that covered every aspect. He couldn't just invest in extraction of oil. He couldn't just invest in the production of power. He had to look at the full energy value chain to be able to deliver for the people. And I can tell you, after an event, the most recent one being the COVID pandemic, no longer do the people of Kurdistan wait in line for refined fuels. No longer do the people of Kurdistan not have power when they flip the switch. No longer do the people in Kurdistan wait in bread lines or such as those things that historically happened because of this development, the full value chain of it. To drill down, sorry, a little oil man talk, but to drill down on your Runaki question. Runaki, for those of you who don't know, I participate in 2 ways in Runaki, both as CAR selling power, but I also live in Erbil and I consume power. And so let me tell you as a consumer first. Runaki is a project to deliver 24/7 power from the grid, so utility scale power at a good rate to the public. And before that, we had a mixture of ways that we received power. We had neighborhood generators that would belch the fuel and exhaust that they were providing power to our neighborhood. We had private generators at our houses if we could afford them, and we had grid power as well. And the grid power would be anywhere from 12 to 14 hours of your supply. Those three elements combined total are expensive. They're expensive for the consumer. Under the Prime Minister's leadership, they have now signed up all of Erbil onto a 24/7 power delivery program, of which we have smart meters installed, and that is metered, and we now pay, which will be a reformed price, as I saw from the cabinet meeting last week, a standard fee across all that. As a consumer, I'm ecstatic. I get up in the morning, I don't have to reset the clock on my coffee pot, my coffee's already brewed. I sleep during the night, my power doesn't go off, my air conditioner stays running, I don't have to turn it back on. So it's amazing. And in total cost, as a consumer, I tell you, my power bill did not fluctuate at all. It did not fluctuate at all. So that it's excellent that we can supply power from our power plant into the Kurdistan grid for this important initiative of the government and for the people.
Very good. Thank you for that, Brad. Thanks for that important work. We just have about 5 minutes left. Mr. Minister, I'd like to come back to you very quickly, if you could, in just a couple of minutes. You mentioned the budget negotiations with Baghdad. Tell us how things are going with that, specifically regarding salaries, because you're involved in those negotiations as well.
In 2005, we agreed with Baghdad that we are getting 17% of the Iraqi budget law, and this process continued until the end of 2013. As I mentioned, in February 2014, this transfers has been cut totally by Baghdad. From 2014 until 2023, really there were no any transfers by the Ministry of Finance in Baghdad to Kurdistan region. So we ran our economic and we pay salary through the oil export revenues. But in 2023, really for the first time we agreed with Baghdad that we are transferring our oil to SOMO and the revenue is going to Baghdad. And the non-oil revenue, we can share it with Baghdad, 50%. And then we are expecting that we are getting our share from the Iraqi budget law, which is more than $11 billion per year. But unfortunately, in 2023, still they put another term in the Iraqi budget law, which belonged to 2015, when Haider al-Abadi was the prime minister, actual expenses. So Kurdistan region was not getting its own actual numbers that has been stated in the budget law. We were getting 50% of these numbers. So it doesn't work for the salaries. So I remember in 2016, 2017, we obliged to cut salaries of the civil service to be 50%, sometimes to 25%. So the Kurdistan region really faced a very huge economic crisis. But the problem was that they mixed the salary of the civil servant to the oil obligations. But the federal court in Baghdad, they ruled against Baghdad that the salaries should be separated from any political conflicts between Baghdad and Erbil. Since 2023, 2024, and these 4 months for 2025, we are getting our salaries from Baghdad. But unfortunately, still they are making some excuses and technical issues. Now there are zero technical problems in our payroll. In our balance sheet, we are sharing our balance sheets every month to Baghdad, Ministry of Finance. And very transparently, we are showing our revenues and our expenditures. And then every employee in Kurdistan region, they have their own biometric registration. They have a unit personnel number. And through the My Account project now, the government is trying to every employee at the government, they are getting their salary through the banking, through the credit card. With this really not just for like a financing and transferring money to the employee through the banking. It is, a great tool for money laundering issues. And what is really U.S. is very concerned about the currency of dollar and the managing through the central bank of Iraq. So really, according to the constitution, we are entitled to get our share from the Iraqi federal revenues, not from the expenses. Then the Kurdistan region has its constitutional authority, how we are distributing our share that we are receiving from Baghdad for the operation costs, for the salaries, for the investment project. So at the last cabinet meeting in Erbil, really, the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers requested the Minister of Finance, Minister of Natural Resources, and Minister of Planning to try, propose, and find another constitutional tool to deal with for the next 3 years budget law. Because in September this year, the Ministry of Finance trying to have another 3 years budget law for 2026, 2027, and 2028. So we stated very clearly that according to the Constitution, really we want to have our share, which is according to the last census, population census, our share in the population of Iraq is more than 14%, not 12.67 that has been put it in the Iraqi budget law for 2023 and 2024, 2025. So really, there are a good cooperation now between Baghdad and Erbil regarding budget. A joint committee from the Supreme Auditing Board in Kurdistan and in federal government, they are doing every 3 months, since 2023, they are auditing every finance issues in Kurdistan region, including oil as well. And they are presenting joint reports to the Prime Minister Sudani and Prime Minister Barzani. So technically, I think now we are in a better situation with Baghdad regarding the payroll, biometric registration. The only thing that stayed now as outstanding issue is the non-oil revenues. Non-oil revenues, really, we have a taxation, we have a customs, and we did a great reform. Imagine in 2023, the revenue of the Kurdistan region, non-oil revenues, was like a $2.8 billion. Whole Iraq, with the 15 provinces, was not more than $10 billion. So it means that the Kurdistan region has made some serious reforms in the non-oil revenues, especially in the customs and taxation. So if we have two options with Iraq. The first is if we are transferring all our non-oil revenues to Baghdad, in return we are entitled to get our other allocations, not just salaries, because we have allocations for the operation budget, for the investment project allocations as well. And the second option that we are keeping 50%, as we are doing now, of these non-oil revenues, because the government is not just salaries. You have a health, security, education. So within these 50% of our non-oil revenues, we are running the other sectors of the government, and the other 50% we are transferring to the Ministry of Finance. Just yesterday, we transferred April federal share of the non-oil revenues to Baghdad, and we are sharing our balance sheet every month with Baghdad in a transparent way to know about all expenses and revenues. So I am really ambitious and optimistic that within a frame of the Iraqi budget law for the next 3 years, we will find another tool, because this doesn't work anymore. Actual expenses and 12.67% of the Iraqi expenses that transfer into Kurdistan. And really we need to separate salary from such conflicts. Sometimes they are linking the oil outstanding issues and the non-oil revenues issues with the sometimes political concerns will be linked to the salaries. Salaries, it's a legal right for the employee. It's not linked to any political. And the Constitution is very clearly saying that the equality should be dealt with every citizen in the whole Iraq. And the Supreme Court really very clearly resolves the salary issue. So we are expecting that we will not face the same problem that we faced really in the last 4 months for the next months for 2025.
Thank you very much. I regret that I feel we're just getting started with this panel, and I'm very sorry because we have a tight schedule, because we've got Secretary Wright coming in the next few minutes, and we have to change the stage a little bit. Thank you, Minister Ahmad Rahim, for your time. Brad, thank you, and thank you for your sponsorship of this event and all the good work and great work that you're really doing with CAR in the Kurdistan region. And friend Mike Knights for really superb analysis. It's good to have you with us. Please Please join me in thanking the panel, and we'll start the next one momentarily.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right. Yes, yeah, we got to move the chairs.
If everyone could take their seats, please. I'm going to begin in a few moments. Everyone can please take their seats.
Well, thank you, and thanks to everybody. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Let me do a brief introduction. We'll get right into the questions. This is an exciting week. I know you just came from a great conversation with Prime Minister Barzani. I'm sure some of that, what you can share with us about thinking about the importance of the Kurdistan region's resources in terms of U.S. policy and investment. I think it's critical. Many of you know Chris Wright. He's the 17th Secretary of Energy for the United States. He is an entrepreneur. He's a humanitarian. And he has a passion for bringing the benefits of energy to every community in the world. And that comes through every day in your work, both here in the United States and what you do internationally. His passions inspired a career in energy, not only in oil and gas, but in nuclear and in shale development, where you've really been a pioneer in a number of the companies you've been working with. Pinnacle Technologies, which created the hydraulic fracture mapping industry. And these innovations helped launch commercial shale gas production in the 1990s, so you've been doing this for decades. You're also chairman of Stroud Energy. That was an energy shale gas producer. You sold it to Range. And most recently, you've served as chairman and CEO of Liberty Energy, where your team helped to expand the shale revolution to include oil as well as natural gas. It's an amazing record of accomplishment. Thank you for joining us today on what's been an exciting week for the Kurdistan region and U.S. investment in the energy industry. Let me start with the first question. Prime Minister Barzani this week presided over 2 major energy deals, with Western Zagros estimated to generate $70 billion in revenue and HKN estimated to generate $40 billion. Baghdad has once again, as they have unsuccessfully in the past through their own court system, challenged these deals, but the Trump administration is strongly behind these energy investments, and it has been in calling for Baghdad to honor their existing contracts in the Kurdistan region. Please give us your comment on the importance of U.S. energy investment in the Kurdistan region, especially in the context of what we've seen happening this week with these agreements.
Yeah, Andrew, as you said, energy is the lifeblood of civilization. You know, our economies, our quality of lives, what our opportunities are. And President Trump's agenda is relatively simple. It's prosperity at home and peace abroad. And when companies develop commerce together and develop resources together, you have more peaceful relations. And that is our goal, to spread those commercial relations around, bring commerce, not conflict. I had a great dialogue with Prime Minister Barzani. I think Kurdistan has tremendous natural resources. I see great opportunity for American cooperation there, as evidenced by the signing of these 2 deals. And we would love to see that commercial relationship grow and flourish. Continue the oil production in the region, grow the oil production in the region, and very exciting projects in natural gas that can help electricity generation in the Kurdish region of Iraq, exports around neighboring places, and industrial development, build materials for rebuilding and industry in the area. So very excited about these cooperations.
Mr. Secretary, you mentioned the link between the gas development and electricity. Prime Minister Barzani, who's going to be interviewed after you, will talk in some length about an amazing project. I'm sure you both talked about a little bit, the Runaki project in the Kurdistan region, which is bringing electricity to millions who did not have it before. It's an amazing success. It's not just limited to the Kurdistan region, but it's an example and an opportunity for all of Iraq and even beyond. Let me expand this a little bit and talk about the Kurdistan region's energy resources. We've been talking about them all morning. They're substantial, especially its gas reserves, which could allow it over time to become a hub for all of Iraq and beyond Iraq to other countries, and especially when you see what's happening in Syria and important relations in Turkey and throughout the Levant as the region rebuilds. And this supports U.S. interest broadly in the Middle East and in the energy industry, weaning Iraq and others off of Iranian dependence. This can start with the Kurdistan region. It should not be a tension with Baghdad. Do you see the Kurdistan region's gas and energy reserves in this context a potential partner for the Trump administration's plans for integration in the Middle East as he sees it post-conflict, post-Assad, Syria, and beyond?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, today and throughout my whole lifetime, the single largest source of energy in the world is oil. Oil is incredible. You can't have a modern society, you can't have the lifestyles we all have without oil. But the fastest growing energy source, whether you look over the last 50 years or over the last 12 years, the fastest growing energy source in the world is natural gas. It is also changing the game. It is changing the quality of life for people everywhere that has access to natural gas. Has the chance for industry to build more things, and again, as we mentioned, electricity. We still have 1 billion people with barely any access to electricity, and another 1 billion with only a few hours a day access to electricity. The development of gas in Kurdistan and the existing power infrastructure to grow electricity production and electricity delivered to the people of northern Iraq, to the Kurdish region, and to their neighbors, this is fantastic. This is very aligned with President Trump's agenda, to unleash energy dominance in the United States and to our allies abroad. So very excited to see these commercial developments and to develop resources. There's often this term, resources. Our country's endowed with great resources. I think often that's the wrong word, because when materials are underground, they're materials. They aren't resources. They only become resources when people and technology and business conditions allow them to be produced and distributed. So we are very keen to work with and support the people of the Kurdish region to turn their endowments underground of materials into resources. And of course, in that region and among the Kurdish people, they have a history of already doing that. It's not that this is new, but what we would like to see is this cooperation to expand this and grow it. Good for the economy there, good for the United States and our partner companies there, and good for all those that will benefit from that increased energy resources.
Absolutely, and good for the region. I mean, as the Trump administration
Commerce, not conflict.
Commerce, not conflict, absolutely. Secretary, you were with President Trump on this trip to the Middle East. And I'd like you to think about the amazing week you had with President Trump in the context of what's been happening this week with the announcement of the U.S. deals in the Kurdistan region. Are we not seeing in both places a similar trend for U.S. policy? The Gulf trusting the U.S. economy and the U.S. government with sizable investment, and the Kurdistan region trusting the United States with game-changing investment in its energy assets. Is this not a trend we're seeing that's part of a good news story in terms of energy?
This is a trend. This is a good news story. We had the previous administration here in the United States that chose to sort of shun our allies in the region and spend all of its effort on the biggest source of trouble in the Middle East, which has been Iran. It's been a destabilizing force across the region. It is at a breakneck pace to develop nuclear weapons. The last administration spent their effort on Iran. We want to embrace our allies in the region for commerce, alliance, progress. Again, commerce, not conflict, and align together to end the menace that Iran has been to the region. We want to see Iran dismantle its nuclear weapons program and end its troublemaking in the region. Think of how fruitful, how fantastic that whole region would be if the people focused on commerce, their resources, and their people, and we had peace and prosperity in the Middle East. That is the vision of President Trump.
And I think it's supported by the Kurdistan region's energy resources. Iraq, we discussed earlier today, is going to have an electricity crisis again this summer. The federal government of Iraq depends on Iran for its electricity and gas, and the people of Iraq suffer because of it. The Kurdistan region has the resources, the vision, the capacity through its Electricity 24 program to be able to bring electricity from within Iraq, from within its people, productive people, working with the United States to them. This can be a real step in the maximum pressure policy and in turning the region toward American rather than Iranian assets and investment.
American companies in partnership with locals in the Kurdish region of northern Iraq, of course, is developing energy resources within Iraq. If you have energy resources within your own country, or they're supplied by friendly nations, you can have a peaceful, prosperous society. But I agree with the premise of your question, that counting on energy resources from Iran is not a road to peace and prosperity.
And there's no reason to do that. One of the positive news about the Western Zagros and HKN deals, the Western Zagros deal was supported with strong commercial advocacy by the U.S. government throughout. HKN deal, when these were announced, they were both strongly supported by the State Department. There seems to be a significant turn in policy toward U.S. investment. Secretary Rubio said just this week that the autonomous region of the Kurdistan region is a linchpin for U.S. policy, and that includes these types of commercial and energy engagements.
Well said by Secretary Rubio. Well said.
Mr. Secretary, I know your time is short. Tell us a little more about how you see the region in terms of overall energy markets and how it fits with the broader picture of U.S. energy policy, looking out at the Middle East over the next year or two.
On our trip where we visited three key allies of the United States in the Middle East that are also major energy producers. So we have sort of twofold interest. One there is to grow the energy resources for America and for the world and for our allies abroad. So these are major energy producers that we have investments from American companies helping production in all of those countries. And those countries that have been very successful energy producers have generated a lot of excess capital and a need to invest that. And their primary investment destination is the United States. So this brings investments into our country, helps reindustrialize our nation, brings job opportunities to the heartland of America and across our economy. So multiple facets to our relationship with our allies in the Middle East, but that is absolutely the direction we want to go. Closer engagement with our allies, commercial ties, U.S. investments into other regions and other parts of the world, as we see here in the Kurdish region of Iraq. They develop closer commercial ties, and ultimately we'll see investment flowing the other way as well. But when people have tight commercial ties in well-energized societies, you can have a peaceful, prosperous world. That is the agenda of President Trump. And I think this fits right in that stream.
Thank you. And, you know, as I said, it's been really a consequential week for both U.S. energy policy with these transactions. It's been a consequential week for U.S. policy toward the Kurdistan region. And as you know, within Iraq, the Kurdistan region has been a vital partner and ally, not just in terms of energy, not just in terms of business, but as a partnership, strategic partner in fighting terrorists and deposing the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein many years ago as well.
In defeating ISIS.
In defeating ISIS, that's what I mean, exactly.
The Kurdish people and Kurdish forces have been allies with the United States in many causes.
Great. Mr. Secretary, this has been fantastic to have you here with us today. I'm so glad you shared some time, that you had a great conversation with Prime Minister Barzani, and that you took the time to talk about the U.S. interests in the Kurdistan region and its energy resources with us, how that fits with the U.S. policy and the Trump administration's vision for economic integration and prosperity, commerce, not conflict, as you said it so well. So thank you for that. I know we're on a tight schedule. You have a tight schedule. Prime Minister Barzani does. We're going to bring him up now to talk about the exciting developments in the Kurdistan region. But first, I want to thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation.
Thank you. My honor.
Well done, Secretary. And Prime Minister Barzani will be interviewed by El Monitor Chief Correspondent Amberin Zaman.
Are we ready to go?
Yes, please.
So we only have half an hour, and I'm going to ask you 3 questions.
Okay.
So it's really wonderful that you're here with a positive agenda, because usually it's about war and how the Kurds can help the United States fight their common enemy. You've signed all these very big deals, and of course they're closely bound up with your pet project, Ronaki, providing 24 hours electricity to Kurdistan, which personally thrills me because I was kind of sick of getting stuck in the lift at the Rotana Hotel. But this project, providing 24 hours electricity, of course, actually is very much bound up with your agenda of fighting corruption in Kurdistan, attacking these vested interests, which of course also include the so-called generator mafia. But at the same time, there is psychological resistance, of course, among the people who are used to getting almost free energy. So, Prime Minister, can you kind of walk us through all the challenges and the benefits of this project?
Well, first of all, thank you, Amber, and it's good to be here. And please allow me to thank Mr. Secretary for being with us today and thank the whole audience for being here. Of course, your question is very important, and that is one of the basic services that every people deserve to have electricity. Of course, this is a very long problem that our people have been suffering from, and we recently have started some reforms, one of which was to provide this project of Runaki, which means to provide 24-hour electricity to all of Kurdistan. And I'm very glad that actually it's working very well. It's going and moving forward. Now we are providing to the main cities. I can tell the audience that by the end of this year we will have all our major cities covered with the full 24-hour electricity, and by the end of next year our hope is that all of Kurdistan will have 24-hour electricity. Of course, due to the lack of enough resources, we didn't have enough electricity to provide, so most of the generators were coming in to fill the gap. Of course, I mean, that would also pollute the air. There was a lot of noise, sometimes some issues, 2 bills the people had to pay, electricity coming and going, switching. It wasn't a very easy time for our people. So in this project, we're trying to, first of all, give 24-hour electricity, and for the 80% of people in Kurdistan is going to be cheaper. Only those who wish to use more power, then they have to be responsible for their actions. Otherwise, it would be a cheaper bill, for people. And our goal is not only to provide electricity for our region, but we know that the entire country, all of Iraq and the region, is in shortage of electricity. We have the capacity to produce more resources, more gas, so that we could have more electricity, not only for Kurdistan, but for the rest of Iraq, and for the neighborhood if we could. And that's why I'm very proud that recently we signed 2 important deals with 2 American companies that have been operating in Kurdistan for more than 15 years. And this is going to help produce more gas, which essentially is going to produce more electricity for everyone. And I think this is exactly what we should be doing. Look at our people and try to provide more services for the people.
So what you're describing is essentially a win-win situation for Iraq as a whole.
Absolutely.
Yet, as was mentioned during the previous panels, there is yet again resistance from Baghdad to this, and even talk of legal cases being mounted anew in Baghdad to stop these deals going forward. Given that little seems to have changed in Baghdad despite all the promises, do you feel that Prime Minister Soudani deserves your support in the upcoming elections in Iraq in October?
Well, let's focus on the statement coming from Baghdad. I think they should have waited to know what this deal means. This is a deal that would really serve the entire country. It will serve and would be beneficial to the Iraqi people as a whole. It's not just the Kurdish people in Kurdistan. So this is a deal that everybody is looking for, because it will produce more electricity to people. Why stand against it? You talked about the legality of these deals. Well, they are absolutely legal, because these 2 companies have been operating in Kurdistan in different fields, and their contracts have been taken to the court, and 3 times court in Baghdad decided in favor of the contracts of the KRGs and OUCs. So the extension of their fields and their operations in Kurdistan is absolutely legal. In fact, the Constitution is giving Kurdistan region the right to do more deals in the areas that are under the control of the Kurdistan region. So it's absolutely constitutional, it's legal, and any dispute or any decisions or statements against these deals will be just political statements and nothing else. Of course, you know, we would like to have a prosperous country. We would like to have a prime minister, a government that would respect the constitution, and we have tremendous respect for Prime Minister Soudani, and we hope that he will continue to act as a prime minister of all of Iraq and look at Kurdistan region and the rest of Iraq in the same way. And of course, any prime minister that promises to serve the whole country deserves the support of the Iraqi people, including ours.
So does he say anything different to you behind closed doors? Does he say, look, I'd really like to do this, including for the pipeline, but hey, my hands are tied by X, Y, and Z? Do you have those kinds of conversations? And where can the United States perhaps intervene constructively to help unblock this?
No, we always have very good conversations with the Prime Minister. He's always been expressing his willingness to be supportive.
You're such a diplomat. Well, moving on to, I said that, you know, we never talk about war, but in neighboring Syria, you have a new government and you still have an ISIS problem. Are you confident that this new government in Syria, which is led by somebody who had an association of some kind with ISIS at some point, and whose country remains very fractured, and there's a huge security vacuum, are you confident that his government will be able to contain this problem? And going forward, do you see the benefits of working with him and with the US-led coalition, and of course the SDF, and continuing to defeat and destroy ISIS?
Well, no doubt, Syria is going through some challenging times, and there is a new era for the Syrian people, the Syrian government. We all know the background of all the players in the region. I think that this regime also deserves a chance, as we saw that President Trump in his visit met with President Shara, and promising to lift sanctions not only by the Americans but also by the Europeans. And we've seen that many of the regional countries also promising to help if the regime in Damascus is up to the challenges. I think everybody deserves that chance to see how they will perform. We hear good things from all sides. We know that it's not easy. The country is still not well controlled. There are still many different factions. There are still many arguments about the nature and the structure of the future government in Syria. We hope that eventually the Syrian people will all come together. They will have an election and they will have a constitution that would respect the rights of all the groups, components, minorities, whether they are Kurds or Alawis or Druze or other Arabs in all of Syria. This is a decision for the Syrian people to make, but definitely when we see that whenever the Syrian people decide and agree on a structure that is suited for them, of course we will be supportive. They are our neighbors, and we'd like to promote peace and development in our neighborhood, which eventually is going to be beneficial to all of us.
You spoke of building a new model in Syria, and we have a model in Iraq that has granted you, the Kurds, federalism, federal status. We also know that the president, the interim president of Syria, seems very bent on a unified, centralized system. Do you think that's realistic for Syria? We also know that your father, Masoud Barzani, has played a very important role in bringing the opposing groups in Syrian Kurdistan together so that they can go to Damascus united and trying to get the best deal they can for themselves. Do you believe that there is hope for a sort of more decentralized model for Syria that, to me personally, seems the realistic one? And do you believe the regional players, and Turkey in particular, which seems to have outsized influence on Syria, would go along with that?
Look, let's look at Iraq first. We have a federal system in Iraq. But federalism is not just ink on the paper. federalism needs to be implemented the way it's supposed to. Of course, we have shortcomings today in Iraq in the implementation of the constitution. Federalism, we think, I mean, this is something that we believe would be the best system for Iraq. In 2005, the majority of the Iraqi people voted and ratified the constitution. So this is a system that has been promising. Although there are still challenges, not because federalism is bad, because federalism has not been fully implemented. So it's very important that when you have a system, the system is respected. And that's what we want for Iraq. Now, for Syria, you're absolutely right. President Barzani invited both factions of the Kurds in Syria to come to Erbil and to convene with both sides and encourage them to come together. We think that a united Kurdish front in Syria is going to be very helpful. It will give them strength in negotiating with Damascus to secure their rights. But of course, it's their decision what kind of model they want to negotiate with Damascus and what kind of agreement they want to have with Damascus. All we want is to see the Kurdish rights being respected. And of course, during the negotiations, I believe that they will come up with a system that works for all of them. And in terms of the neighbors of Syria, so far we've seen that the tensions have been eased, and everyone is looking for an opportunity or are ready to look at that chance for Syria to not only come out of ashes but also to thrive.
We're here in Washington, and I'd like to ask you about Secretary Rubio's comments about Kurdistan, saying how important preserving Kurdish autonomy is. Do you feel that there is a shift under the Trump administration in the relationship between the United States and the Kurdistan regional government?
We appreciate the statement by Secretary Rubio. We think it was very important to hear that statement coming from the United States, which we consider to be our closest ally. We are proud allies and friends of the United States. And to be frank, we are very supportive of the policy of President Trump's administration and his decision in promoting peace, development, and prosperity in different parts of the world. This is why we are here. We are here to prove that Kurdistan is not only good in fighting terrorism with the allies, but it's also ready to build with allies so that we could serve our people and also the American investors who are wishing and willing to come to Kurdistan. So this is a win-win situation for everyone. And yes, we do see that there is, we feel the welcome, we feel the support that we have here in Washington, and we are very proud of this relationship.
Well, I think we can end on that very positive note. Thank you so very much, Prime Minister.
Thank you. Coming, we appreciate this. Prime Minister Barzani, Secretary, everyone.